Good afternoon, it's Kristen Hancock, the Simcoe County Stamper, and I am sharing a tip this Tuesday with you. It's been a while since I've done a Share a Tip Tuesday, but I woke up this morning with a question about ink pads and reinkers from a teammate, and I thought, well, if she's wondering, then chances are somebody else might be wondering how to do this too. So if you're using an ink pad and you notice that when you're inking with it, some of the images are coming with darker and lighter areas, chances are you probably need to add some reinker. Your ink pad is starting to get dry, and that's why you're seeing the variation of color in your stamping. So how do we reink? I like to have a few things on hand when I'm doing this. So this bone folder with all of the ink on it is one that I use specifically for my ink pads. I like to have baby wipes handy to clean that off. And paper towel is another thing that you can have handy. Just in case you add too much, you can dab off a little bit and remove some ink. So this is my shaded spruce pad. I like to start on one end of the pad and work my way to the other end. Couple things, when you add a drop of ink, reinker, to your pad and it stays on top, it doesn't absorb in, that means that your pad in that area doesn't really need ink, right? It's taking a while, it's sitting on top, it's already saturated. When you add reinker and it absorbs right away and it disappears, that's a dry area on your pad. So you'll want to make sure that you go back and add a little bit more. So as I said, I start from one end. I'm going to start from the left, and I'm just going to put, I'll try to do it so that you can see. I'm just going to put a few drops. Let's start on the left. And you can see this pad, it's not absorbing right away, so this pad doesn't really need it. In the center, it's starting to disappear, those ones, so. But on the end there, didn't really need very much. See these ones that are disappearing quicker. And this pad, like I said, because they're staying on top, it doesn't need a lot of reinker. If the pad needed a lot, I would go in again, starting from this direction and adding more. But I don't want to make my ink pad too saturated, so I'm going to close this up. I'm going to get a baby wipe out. And what you want to do with the bone folder is you're going to start from one end of the pad, moving it to the other end, and then back, and from one direction to the other, so that you're doing both directions, right? Really like moving the ink around. And then wiping that off. And then you always want to have a stamp mounted and ready to practice, to test, I should say, to make sure that it's inking evenly. And this one is good. If it wasn't, or like I said, if when you added the reinker, it absorbed right away, you would just go back and repeat the process. Keep adding until it stays on top for a couple seconds, and then you know you've got enough, right? So that is my tips on how I do my reinking. Another tip to share is about moving ink. So if you have a really saturated pad, you can use your bone folder to move the ink from one end to the other. Especially if you have an image, and I did a video on this a couple years ago. You can move all of the ink from one end to the other so that when you're stamping with a really finely detailed stamp and you put that stamp into the pad and you put it on your paper, a lot of times if it's really saturated, you'll lose all that detail because there's just too much ink. So your bone folder will move the ink to one end so that you can stamp and then you can move it all back. So that's just another tip to share. So I hope that you found this helpful. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments. And if you have any tips that you want to share, you can put them in the comments too. Thanks for watching.